So we're going to continue work here. You're going to see as this elbow comes up, it kind of gets a little bit, you know, this is going to be probably a sharper transition. If you wanted to, you can go in here with your clip curve brush, but when you go in here and double tap to get a sharp curve, it's going to start taking away pieces of, you know, other pieces of mesh. You're going to mask those out first, and then go ahead and use your clip curve to kind of clip those areas back. If you want to be a little bit more careful, or you want to go in here with a brush, you can use the Damien standard, and you can also do visibility with this as well. So if I undo that and we hold down Control Shift, we'll switch back over to select rectangle. Oh, here's a trick. Let's stay on clip curve, but let's say I just want to isolate this little piece in here. So I can hold down Control Shift and drag, tap Control one more time to temporarily switch to select rectangle. Grab that little area there, and then hold down Control Shift, and you'll have your clip curve available to you. And then I'll clip it just fine. Hold down Control Shift and bring everything back. So that's a little trick. No matter what you have selected over here, you can always tap Control and get select rectangle, and then tap Control again if you wanted to, if you accidentally did that. Or go ahead and select, and then Control Shift, you're back to clipping. So FYI. So we've got that clip back here. We can just continue Control drag to Dynamesh. You can also go in here with your Damien standard brush. And that would be like BDS for Damien Standard, and that'll give you a brush you can use in here to kind of sculpt back in here, so you can smooth, and then use your Damien Standard to kind of pull back through. You can also maybe use some slash brushes to do the same thing. Control drag to re-Dynamesh. So again, we're just going in here mostly smoothing, mostly using the clay brush to kind of just build up these areas and make them look a little bit more natural, and figure out, you know, how this arm is supposed to be composed, and always turning solo on and off so you can see how these pieces are interacting and what you might want to clean up. I guess I can go ahead and just, this little piece in here I can kind of clean up, and then the dress I can maybe clip back. So I can go through here and maybe smooth this out. And you can use also trim dynamic if you want to kind of trim back pieces. I'm going to trim across these polygroups in here. So let's go ahead and go back to our brush auto masking, turn mask by polygroups down to 0. We can go ahead and just use trim dynamic. Go ahead and trim this down, and we'll smooth these little pieces out here. All right, so I can call this arm good enough, probably. Let's go ahead and smooth these transitions down. And if you wanted to get even more detail in here, you could figure out, like, okay, we have a thumb back here, so we can kind of build that up a little bit. So if we go back here, you can see she's got her hand back, and her knuckles aren't real defined, but her thumb is pretty not defined here. So we can go, you can even use your standard brush to kind of build this up, or your clay brush, or clay buildup, whatever brushes you like to use to do this type of work. Kind of build these up just a little bit here. And again, we can maybe even go in here with our Damien standard brush and kind of build in where her wrist is kind of bending. It may not be that by the original sculpt, and you can actually, if you still have the object, you can verify if you're putting in wrong information or not. But I'm just making it just a slight little bit more presentable in the problem areas. And I might regret doing this part here, but I'm going to go ahead and trim these down here as well, because that's like an odd transition from her hand to her fingers here. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll build her fingers up a little bit where they go into her face, so we can kind of clean that transition up. So again, depending on what you're doing, if you're doing like a restoration of an artifact or something, you don't want to be taking a whole lot of artistic liberty with what you're doing with your scan data. But if you're just kind of doing cleanup on your own sculpts, then feel free to get as fancy or as artistic as you want with the decisions that you're making to make it look better. Now, if you're smoothing and you wanted to maybe smooth it a little bit more, the smooth brush doesn't seem to be doing too much. What I like to do is go into hit the comma key, go into your brush menu, your lightbox brush menu, go to the smooth brushes, and you're going to see in here is an option called Smooth Stronger. When you double click that one, it'll say from now on when you hold down Shift, you get Smooth Stronger, and that'll give you a stronger effect. And where that is if you hold down Shift to go to your smooth brushes, your smooth brush modifiers here, your weighted smooth mode. Again, if I hold down Shift, you're going to see that changes to 1 with Smooth Stronger. All that is, if you go into your smooth brush and change the weighted smooth mode to a different number, it's going to have different effects. So in our case, we want to do Smooth Stronger. We're just going to do that. So again, let's go in here with our Damien standard brush. We'll clean this up a little bit, and I think we're about done with this arm. Again, spend as much time or as little time as you want doing your cleanup. But I think this one's looking okay. If I go in here with my move brush and move this around, you're going to see it kind of has a softer fall off. If you want to pull down to a sharper corner, under the move brush properties, go to your curve menu and turn on AccuCurve, and you will actually pull a little bit more to a point. Be a little bit more accurate in there as you're moving these little pieces around on tight areas like this. That might come in handy. So we've got our clay brush here. We'll go ahead and build that up. And again, add as much or as little surface noise as you want in here later on. I've already shown you those techniques. So we'll go ahead and go out of solo mode, and I'm going to go ahead and clean up this arm really quick. Again, we can run another close holes operation, or we can just, if it turned off Dynamesh, it should still maintain the settings that you had, but on Geometry Dynamesh, again, turn off Blur, turn Dynamesh on, and then if you have your brush settings, Mask by Polygroups up to 100, you can go through here, and just like we have the other previous ones, just go ahead and go through here and clean this up. I'm going to go ahead and use the Move brush on these polygroups. If you turn on polygroups here, you're going to see these blue areas. I can move these in, and I can use a clay brush and just affect those areas here, so I can kind of build these out just a little bit. And then Control Drag to continue to Dynamesh. And for this one here, you know, these lumps on her are from the original scan, so it's probably dirt or, you know, paint kind of blobbed up in those areas. I'm not going to really touch those, but I do need to get rid of, just like we did on the other side, this kind of stuff in between her arm and places where it wasn't able to really resolve what was going on. This big chunk right here can probably disappear. So I'm going to go into solo mode here, and instead of using clip, I'm going to go ahead and just do trim. So we're going to do trim curve, and what that's going to do is run a slice operation, then a fill hole. So if I do trim, hold down Control Shift and tap Alt once to give me a Bezier curve here, then I tap Alt twice and just get it away from my other mesh. You're going to see it slices through here and then fills that hole. Actually, we have clip curve, hold down Control Shift, start dragging, tap Control, and then get rid of that by holding down Alt. And now when we use our clip curve, that'll be not visible, and then we can just clip this back, hold down Control Shift to bring everything back, Control Drag to Dynamesh, and now I can just kind of clean up this area in here. Because it wasn't able to get a whole lot of information in here, we'll use our Damien Standard brush to kind of dig her arm down here. Use our move brush with the Acu curve turned on. I actually have a hotkey for a Move Acu brush that I have saved up. Again, if you want more information on that type of functionality, go to my Intro to ZBrush Part 2. And that'll walk you through custom UI, hotkeys for brushes and stuff like that. So you can move a little bit faster around ZBrush. So I'm going to use the clay brush to knock these areas back. Her arm looks a little bit thick in here. And again, I'm going to leave this kind of crusty stuff alone. I think the camera picked up some dirty areas in there, so I'm going to leave that. But in here, I'm just going to tighten up this crook of her arm. I think that's what it's called. And then in her wrist here too, I can use Damien Standard or the standard brush, holding down Alt, and kind of knock this back a little bit. Let's go out of solo mode, make sure everything's okay. This part of her wrist seems a little bit weird, so I'm going to go ahead and soften this transition. We still have Mask by Polygroups up to 100. I'm going to turn that down to 0 because I am going to soften across those polygroups we have built. You know, you want to be careful around the areas that have good resolution, geometry resolution that was put there for a reason by the cameras. And then the clay brush here, we can go ahead and knock this back. And then build this out. I know this is probably going into her leg, but you know, we can go ahead and make the arm look a little bit more natural and that transition into the leg. All right, so we got her head sculpted out, and looks like we need to build out her chin a little bit more. So you can actually go into solo mode or turn on transparency and ghost, and now you can sculpt through objects underneath, and you can also just toggle solo on and off. And we'll go ahead and round these areas out. These little cheeks, and hold down Shift to smooth, and it looks like her neck's getting a little bit fat right under here, so I'm going to go into my clay brush here, and we can just knock this back just a little bit. And one last one is the body here, and it looks like when I did the arm here, I should have probably grabbed this piece here to go to this arm. I can still do that if I want to, but it's not too big of a deal. So I'm going to go ahead and, with the body here, let's go ahead and just run a geometry modify topology close holes operation. Let's go ahead and find that menu for you guys. There we go. And again, if we want to manipulate these holes individually, we can hold down Control Shift, isolate these, and then go to our polygroups, auto groups. And now those are all separate polygroups here, so we can mask them individually or anything we would need to do for them. With Mask by Polygroups up to 100, we can just go through here and again, use whatever brushes you have available to you, like, you know, clay brush, and we'll make sure we stay away from the white polygroup because that's our original scan, and we'll focus on these other areas within here. And again, you can tap W, Control tap any polygroup, and then use your gizmo on any of those as well. Let's see if our Dynamesh is turned on. Still the same settings. Turn off blur, turn Dynamesh on. Now I can clean up some of these areas like in here. I can use my trim dynamic to go ahead and knock this down. Let's turn max with polygroups down to 0 here. And you can use smooth and trim dynamic to just knock these areas back. And also we have this big block, or this box that it was sitting on. We don't really need that information as well. So I'm going to hold down Control Shift, go to Select Lasso, and then holding down Alt, we can go ahead and get rid of this extraneous geo in here. And again, be as careful as you need to be. I'm not too concerned about it. In fact, if you want to be really quick about it, you can go to Select Rectangle, and you can just go ahead and just like get rid of, hold down Alt and just get rid of all that. I'm going to be just slightly more careful than that. I am just going to get rid of just where the box and the rocks, sculpted rocks meet, using my Select Lasso brush. And just like when we were doing the visibility and delete hidden earlier, it's going to be the same idea. We're just going to get rid of what we don't want to see, and then do geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. Now, if I think I got it where I want it, I can hold down Control Shift and drag, and that'll invert my selection, and then you'll see like, oh, there is actually some pieces of these rocks that I want to keep. So just go ahead and hold down Control Shift, Alt, and grab all those pieces back. Then Control Shift drag again. And these stragglers we can clean up in just a minute. So I think that's a pretty good selection. So let's go ahead and say, again, geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. And then we're going to do the trick where we grab a little piece of the main mesh here. Just hold down Control Shift and drag a piece. Control Shift A to visibility, select all. And then all those little stragglers that weren't vert welded are hidden temporarily. So we can go over here and then delete hidden. And now we've got a nice cleaned up mesh here. So if I Control drag again, that's going to go ahead and close that bottom hole. And it also gives us a polygroup, so if we want to get rid of that later, we can. But for now, let's go ahead and turn off solo, and we'll make sure that these areas in here are cleaned up. It looks like this part in here needs to be kind of cut back, because that's where her arm goes in, and then her neck area, we're going to have to modify just a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and get my trim dynamic. I'm smoothing these down and dynameshing as I go, just by control dragging. And if you ever get those little pinpoints that just have like, it'll look something like a little point in here and you're having a hard time smoothing it down, if you go down here to your brush modes and you're going to see min connected is set to 3, if you set that to 1, then you'll be able to smooth down just single individual points. It's on 3 by default. But anyways, let's go ahead and bring her head back and you're going to see, okay, yeah, she has no neck in here, so we can go ahead and fill that up if we want to. We can go ahead and do BI brush insert. We'll grab insert multi-mesh primitives. You can go up here and you can select a cylinder, or you can hit the M as in Michael Pavlovich and grab an insert cylinder here. And now if we turn on transparency, we can just drop a neck right in here and then use our gizmo to kind of position where her neck should be. We'll go ahead and scale that up, move this in, and then we can use our move brush here. And when we inserted that cylinder, it went ahead and auto-masked the body for us, so we're just moving the cylinder verts, which is nice. And I think that'll work a little bit better. So now we can hold down Control drag again, and now we've Dynamesh that cylinder into the body here. We're going to merge the head into the body in just a second, so I'm not too concerned about just leaving the cylinder there. It's going to disappear. But while we're thinking about it, let's go ahead and clean up these legs just a tad. Go into our trim dynamic and we'll knock these areas down just a bit. And while I'm in here, I'm going to go ahead and get the Damien standard. I'm going to knock this back a bit where her dress kind of melts into her shirt part. And same thing in here. And again, if you're not going to see this really clearly, it's probably not worth all that much effort to clean up. But like I said, while we're in here. And the noise areas I can do individually as there's separate subtools, or I can wait until I merge them all back together and fix it there. All right, I think it's looking fine. So if I go in here to solo mode, you're going to see, okay, here's all the pieces back. We've cleaned up the areas in between her arms. Everything's looking pretty good. So now I can merge all of this back together.